प्रपन्नपारिजाताय तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः. Hare Krishna. Welcome back to the Bhagavad Gita Bhakti Shastri course. We are now in the part of the Bhagavad Gita which will take us from Karma Yoga through Jnana Yoga to Bhakti. So in the previous class we discussed about Varnashram, and now we will move from how Varnashram will after practicing Bhagavad Arpit Bhakti Yoga, one can move Bhagavad Arpit Karma Yoga. That means doing Karma Yoga and Swakarmanatam Abhyarja, doing it for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. One moves onwards to Bhakti. So this is Krishna will talk about how one will move towards Bhakti through the process of Jnana. So let's look at this. So 49 to 53 describe Jnana in brief, and then 54 describes how Jnana leads to Bhakti. And then 55 explains how pure Bhakti, Parabhakti takes us to Krishna. So 18.49 Asakta buddhi sarvatra jitatma vigata spruha naishkarmya siddhim paramam sanyasena adhigacchati. So asakta buddhi sarvatra. Asakta buddhi, that means asakta is attached, asakta is detached. So with detached intelligence, asakta buddhi sarvatra. Sarvatra means all living beings. Chitatma vigata spruha. Chitatma is the soul who has conquered material existence. Chitatma, it's not conquered material existence. Jita Atma. So here Atma refers to the mind. So one who has conquered the mind. Vigata spruha. Vigata spruha is one who is detached, free from material desires. Naishkarmya siddhim paramam. By the practice of Naishkarmya, Siddhim Paramam, the supreme destination, the perfection, Sannyasena Adhigacchati. How can, through Sannyas Adhigacchati, one can attain? So essentially Krishna is talking here about, he is talking about the detachment in three different ways. First he says Asakta Buddhi, Chitatma, and then Vigata Spruha. So through all this he is talking about a detachment. Then that same point is emphasized Sannyasena and Naishkarmya. So till now, previously Krishna was talking about Swakarma. He was talking about Swakarmana Tamabhyarcha. By practice of one's karma, worship the transcendental Lord. But here he takes us to another level where he talks about Naishkarmyena. Naishkarmyena means he says that one does no need to practice karma over here. One gives up karma. One gives up action and lives with not just the spirit of renunciation while doing action, but actually one renounces action entirely. So this is also a valid path, and that is talked about in the Bhagavad Gita at this level in 18.49. Asakta buddhi sarvatra. So the idea is that Varnashram creates a platform for transcendence. Varnashram in and of itself is not always transcendental. No, Varnashram, if it is done for the purpose of satisfying Lord Vishnu, as is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam and in the Vishnu Purana and other places, especially the scriptures that focus on devotion, therein it talks about how Ata Pumbirudjusreshta Varnashram Vibhagasha Sunishchitasya Dharmasya Samsiddhir Haritoshanam. The purpose of Varnashram is Haritoshanam, satisfaction of Lord Hari. And similarly, the purpose of Varnashram is Varnashram Acharvata Purushena Purapaman Vishnuraradhyate Pantha Na Anyat Tattosha Na Anyat Tattosha. There is no other Karan. Apart from that, apart from what? Purushena Parahapaman Vishnuraradhyate. The Purusha, the Param-Purusha, who is Vishnu, apart from his worship, there is no other purpose of Varnashram. So that means if we consider it at three levels, there is Karma Yoga, one practices Karma Yoga. That is, if one does it for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu, then that can lead one directly to devotional service. But that the alternative way is that one practices Karma Yoga, then one renounces the world, practices Jnana Yoga, and after Jnana Yoga, with the practice of Jnana Yoga, one will eventually come to the practice of Bhakti. That's what we will be discussing now, hereafter. So, the practice of Varnashram is supportive to the practice of bhakti. Varnashram itself is not bhakti, and Varnashram should never be used to beat down or suppress the principles of bhakti. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu makes it very clear when he subordinates the Varnashram identity to the Vaishnava identity. There is the famous verse which he would recite, especially when he was in front of Lord Jagannath in the Jagannath Rath Yatra. He says, Naham Vipro, Nacha Narapatir, Napi Vaishyo na Shudro, Naham Varane, Nacha Grahapatir, Vanastho Yatirva. So he is disidentifying himself, not misidentifying, disidentifying. Means not, no, I don't identify myself with this. With what? With any Varna or any ashram, with anything associated with Varna ashram. And he says, then who am I? Kintu prodhyam nikhil paramananda purna amrutabde gopi bharto padakamallayor dasa dasa anudasa. Gopi bharto padakamallayor. That Lord who is the master of the gopis, I am the servant of the servant of the servant. So here, Lord Chaitanya rejects Varnashram for the sake, the Varnashram identity, for the sake of the Vaishnava identity. The Vaishnava identity is the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. So, Varnashram, we accept the social organization of Varnashram, but not the philosophy of Varnashram. What do we mean by the philosophy of Varnashram? The philosophy is that one progresses from a lower Varna towards a higher Varna, like I discussed earlier, from Shudra to Vaishya to Kshatriya to Brahmana, and eventually to Moksha. That is the philosophy. So that is when one is following the gradual path. But if one practices bhakti, then what leads to spiritual advancement is not the gradual elevation that happens to Varnashram. What leads to spiritual advancement is the potency of bhakti itself. So for that potency of bhakti to work, what we primarily need is purification. And that purification happens through actually we don't need purification. The practice of bhakti itself leads to purification. And what we need is the desire to serve Krishna, the association of devotees, wherein that desire to serve Krishna is stimulated within us. And then anybody can become elevated. So Krishna will talk about this elevating potency of bhakti, wherein it can elevate anyone from any level in 18.57. So right now he's talking about the gradual process. The gradual process means one moves from the lower mode, lower yoga, from karma yoga to jnana yoga. So let us look at this. Now the next verse will give jnana sadhana. So yes. Siddhim prapto yatha brahma athapnoti nibodha me samase naiva kaunteya nishtha jnanasya ya para. Siddhim prapto yatha brahma. Siddhim prapto. How one can attain perfection? Brahma. Brahma is a generic name referring to the absolute truth. Tatha apnoti nibodha me. So nibodha me. Try to understand. Bodha means to understand. So nibodha. Apnoti. How that Brahma can be attained, please understand from me. Samasena iva kyaunteya. In summary, I will tell it to you. Samasa means summary. Nishtha jnanasya ya para. So, jnanasya ya para. By the process of jnana, one can gradually rise to the transcendental level. So this is the three verses which talk about jnana sadhana. Krishna is giving a prelude in the previous two verses, and in this verses he starts talking about the actual process. Buddhya vishuddhaya yukto vrityatmanam niyamya cha shabdadin vishayam styaktva ragadvesho vidasya cha vivikta sevi lagvashi yatva kaya manasaha dhyana yoga paro nityam vairagyam samupashrutaha ahankaram balam darpam kamham krodham parig vimuchya nirmavam shanto brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So here Krishna is telling buddhya vishuddhaya yukto. So one has intelligence, but one purifies the intelligence. We can have contaminated intelligence and we can have pure intelligence. Krishna has earlier talked about in 3.40 how even the buddhi is a residing place of lust. Indriyani mano buddhir asyadhishthana muchyate etair vimohayattesha jnanamavritya dehinam. So in 3.40 he has said that lust is situated in three places. So those three places are the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. And yet Krishna is telling in the same section of 4 verses later, in 3.43, or 3 verses later, he says that evam buddhe param buddhva samasthabhyatmanam atmanah jaishatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. So therefore, with intelligence, know yourself to be transcendental and situate yourself on the transcendental platform and thereby conquer lust. Evam buddhe param buddhva. So knowing oneself to be transcendental. What does this mean actually? It essentially means that that means the buddhi can be a residing place of lust, and the buddhi can also be the tool for us to conquer lust. How does it work in two different ways? It depends on whether the buddhi is pure or the buddhi is impure. So, for example, when people want to have, say, some illicit affairs, say some extramarital affairs, then people often use a lot of intelligence to try to do everything secretly, so that nobody detects, so that one can do things discreetly, privately, whatever. So now that also requires intelligence. Or if a person wants to, say, enjoy in a way enjoy lust without being detected, that planning for that and executing that also requires intelligence. So intelligence can be used, so this is how, for fulfilling one's lusty desires, or intelligence can be used to recognize the futility of one's lusty desires and to choose desires beyond those lusty desires. So that difference is that diversity, that choice is there for everyone, which way a person will go, down or up. And what determines which way a person will go will be one's spirituality, will be one's basic focus on spirituality or lack of that focus. So if one understands through scripture that I am essentially spiritual and at a spiritual level where I can get real happiness, then one will not indulge in lust. Otherwise, one will indulge in lust. And then one will use one intelligence to indulge in lust, or one will use one intelligence to go beyond lust. So here, if one wants to practice one wants spiritual elevation, it's required buddhya vishuddhaya yukto, vishuddhaya. The intelligence has to become purified. Dhrutyatmanam niyamyacha. So what does it mean, purifying the intelligence? Atmanam niyamya. One has to be controlled, self-control. How? Dhrutyatmanam. Dhrutya is a determination. Actually, if you want to achieve sense control, determination is important, because without determination, it's not possible. If it'll just end up following the stray desires that keep coming in our mind, and these three stray desires will end up making us miserable. So therefore, Dhrutya Atmanam, there is determination. I fall once, twice, thrice, 4 times, it doesn't matter. I can always rise, and I can eventually win. So actually, Dhrutya Atmanam Niyacha, as we discussed briefly earlier, how in our confrontation with our lower desires, we'll go through 4 stages. There'll be helpless failure, there'll be struggle and failure, there'll be struggle and success, and there'll be effortless success. That means the struggle and helpless failure means, say if a person comes initially to spiritual life, that person may feel that, giving up this, no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit. So all these things, better know Krishna consciousness only, forget the whole thing. So one thing is not possible only. So that is a helpless failure. One feels I can't do it only. But then after that there is a struggle and failure. One decides, no, I'm not going to get involved in this. But still a person succumbs to it. Says no, but still succumbs. Says no, but succumbs. Struggle and failure. And after that there is struggle and success. One decides, makes resolutions, and then again feels the pull of temptations and prays to Krishna, takes inspiration from scripture, takes guidance from devotees, and fights and survives. That is struggle and success. And eventually there is effortless success. And effortless success comes when we actually become strong in our spiritual life. and we become situated in the spiritual taste, then there is no temptation only. Actually, one goes beyond the temptation. It's like a devotee habituated practicing Krishna consciousness. Even if somebody offers meat to that devotee, the devotee is not attracted. Meat? No. Actually, there's no temptation only at all in it. So that's how we'll go through these 4 stages. And sometimes we may feel that I'm making no progress at all. I'm feeling the same temptations again and again. No matter what I'm doing. Actually, am I making progress? Although I'm chanting, I'm doing so many things. Still, I seem to be in the same situation month after month, year after year. What should I be doing? Actually, the fact is we are definitely making progress. Definitely. Step 1, step 2, step 3, we are making progress. But the essence of making progress is not just doing the things that we like to do, but the essence of making progress is to remember that every mantra that we are chanting, every act of devotional service that we are doing is internally nourishing us. So sometimes an elephant is small. At that time, the baby elephant is shackled with a terrible, it's a strong shackle, and then the shackle is tied to a pole, and then the elephant pulls and pulls and pulls, and what happens is the shackle just causes torment and pain for the elephant, and the elephant struggles like that, and its leg starts bleeding because of pulling. Then eventually it gives up. It knows every time I'm going to pull, all that I'm going to get is pain in my leg. And therefore the elephant decides I will no longer pull. But every day that it is eating, it is growing. And eventually when the elephant is taken out to the forest, it may be able to even shake and uproot trees and carry huge logs. And it has grown up so much that actually it can just pull out the log to which it is tied to the chain. But when that same elephant, which is so formidable in the forest, is brought back and the shackle is put around it, so now I am lost. Now I'm tired, I can't do anything. So the elephant stops trying only. Why? Because of the past failures and the past pain that was involved in the previous efforts. The elephant thinks, now I can't fight. If I fight, I will suffer. So better I don't fight only. And in that way the elephant decides, forget it. So that is unfortunate. That is very unfortunate. To avoid this misfortune, what one needs to do is know that one is growing and becoming stronger. So in the past, we may have tried to overcome our bad habits, our weaknesses against our anarthas, and we may have found that we just get into so much torment, so much trouble, so much suffering, that we feel better I don't get involved in this business only. Just forget the whole thing. There's no fighting. And whenever the temptation, I just indulge in it and then go on with my life. But that's how we stay trapped. But every day we are chanting, we're nourishing ourselves spiritually, we are becoming bigger and bigger. So initially, say, the anartha was this big and we were this small. We're like a baby, we can be beaten by the anartha. But every day that we are chanting, what is happening is we are growing. So eventually, we become bigger than the anartha. We means our spiritual conviction, our spiritual strength, our being situated in the spiritual state. So we eventually become bigger and stronger than the anartha. But then when we confront the anartha, we still remember in the past when we had succumbed. And because we remember in the past when we had succumbed, so we again fall back to the same thing. But if we have been strong, then attack. No matter how badly we are attacked, we can still stay strong and still protect ourselves from Maya. So what we can do is, the confrontation is going to be there, but gradually we can win against the confrontation. So the only way we'll come to the level of effortless success is by going through the stages of struggle and failure and struggle and success. So maybe at one stage in our battle with anartha, we were at the stage of effortless failure or hopeless failure. But we will come to this level also if we are ready to go through these two earlier levels. So that's why here, what is required is dhrutyatmanam minimum. Dhruti means determination is required. And then how is that expressed? Shabdadin vishayam styaktva ragadbesho vidasya shabdadin vishayam styaktva. So this is talking about a state of pratyahar, where one shuts out all the sense objects. Shabdadin. Shabda refers to sound. So the sound is one of the sense objects. There's beautiful music, melodious sounds, pleasing voices. All this attracts us, so we shut it out. Shabdadin Vishayans Tyaktva. And then Raga Dvesha Vidasya. Vidasya means one stays free from Raga and Dvesha, putting it aside. And then Vivikta Sevi Lagvashi Yatva Kaya Manasa. So Vivikta Sevi means one stays in a secluded place. So if it means again there are three levels. Either one can have materialistic association, one can stay away from materialistic association, or one can have devotee association. So Krishna has talked about devotee association in 10.9 when he said Machitta Madgata Pranam Bodhayanta Parasparam Kathayantascha Mam Nityam Tushyanti Charmanti Cha. So he's talked about how the devotees delight in the Sangha of devotees. But here he's talking about something else now. Vivikta Sevi Lagvashi. So he is talking about the process of jnana. In the process of jnana, one does not necessarily delight in materialistic association, but one has not yet developed the taste for devotee association. So then one stays away. Krishna has talked about this earlier also in the 13th chapter when he talked about the characteristics of one who is in jnana. Aratir jana samsadi vivikta deshi. He says Vikta, Aratir Jana Samsadi, one stays away from general people. So Lagvashi means one eats minimum. Laghu means minimum or less. Ashi is to eat. Lagvashi means to eat less. So actually, when one eats more, then one's senses become strong and one gets tempted with all the other desires for enjoyment. So Lagvashi doesn't necessarily mean that one has to starve, but one should eat. Basically, in the process of jnana, one tries to cut off one's material engagements as much as possible. So by eating less, one can keep the senses from becoming too strong, because the body doesn't have any extra energy for sense gratification, and thereby one can focus on higher spiritual purposes. Yatva kaya manasa. So again, the three things, these three standard faculties, the body, the mind and the speech, one brings them under control. Dhyana yoga paro nityam. Dhyana yoga. One practices dhyana. One does dhyana yoga paro nityam. So dhyana yoga together, this can refer to dhyana yoga also, or it can refer to dhyana, meditation. So even in the path of jnana, one does meditation. It may not necessarily exactly the same meditation that one does when practicing dhyana, the path of dhyana yoga. So dhyana yoga together can be one word or they can be two different words. So one does dhyana, practices yoga, paro nityam. So one wants to come to the transcendental platform and vairagyam samupashritaha. So Krishna is emphasizing again, like he talked about sannyasa in the previous verse. Similarly, vairagya is talking in this verse. This whole process is centered on negation, on the rejection. Krishna has not yet talked about the positive connection, which he will talk about in 18.54 onwards. Here he's talking about disconnection from the material world. So ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodham parigraham vimuchya nirmamah shanto brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So the whole end of all this is to come to brahma bhuyaya kalpate, to come to the Brahman level. And he is giving a list of the mentalities that can keep us away from the Brahma platform. Ahankaram balam darpam. So all these are the mentalities that can keep us away from the spiritual platform. Arrogance, now balam, darpam. Now bala, strength is not necessarily bad, but one has overconfidence in one's strength and one relies only on one's strength and doesn't take shelter of the higher strength of God, then that creates problem. Darpa is arrogance. Kamam krodham parigraham. Kama krodha. We have discussed about this pair of wanting to enjoy, and when I can't enjoy, then I destroy everything so that nobody else can also enjoy. Parigraha. So Krishna has used the word aparigraha earlier, especially in the 6th chapter. So parigraha means possessiveness. Aparigraha means giving up possessiveness. So here Krishna is talking about things which you should give up. Vimuchya. So one gives up the possessive mentality. Nirmamah shanto. And so without a sense of proprietorship, one becomes peaceful. And then Brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So we'll see, it's quite might seem a a formidable list of attributes to be acquired by which one can come to the spiritual platform. Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. By this one will come to the Brahman platform. Once one comes to the Brahman platform, one becomes peaceful over there. Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. So the word that Krishna is using over here is significant, that whereas the word Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate come earlier, it's come earlier in 14.26, where Krishna has talked about, the 14th chapter was about the three modes, and then when he says, Arjuna asks towards the end of the 14th chapter, what is the means by which one can transcend the modes? And there he describes in 14.21, the question comes up, how does one transcend? And there he tells Bhakti Yoga is the means to transcend. Mam chayo vyabhicharena Bhakti Yogena sevate Sagunan Samatiti Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. So one comes to Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. One comes to the Brahman platform by practicing bhakti. So by practicing avyabhichari bhakti, one can come to the Brahman platform. But that Krishna is not talking about over here. Krishna is not talking about how by steady practice of jnana, by disconnection with the material world, by staying equipoised towards everything material, one can come to the Brahman platform. So here that's what Krishna is talking about. And Prabhupada quotes in the purport about how can one come to the Brahman platform. He quotes the famous verse 2.70 from the Bhagavad Gita. Apurimanamachala pratishtham samudramapa pravishanti yadvad tadvad kamayam pravishanti sarve sushantimapnoti na kama kami. This is sushantimapnoti na kama kami. That by this one can attain perfection. Nakama kami, that by letting just as desires flow into the water, ocean, but they don't disturb a person. Similarly, one can go beyond the disturbance of material things by practicing, by becoming self-satisfied internally. So if one is internally like an ocean, then the flow of desires, which are like rivers coming inside, doesn't disturb one. So by cultivating awareness of one's spiritual identity, which can come through jnana, or by cultivating the taste for spiritual devotional happiness that comes through bhakti, one can become internally like an ocean, and then one will not be disturbed. So Prabhupada is talking about this is the way to become, to give up kama. So that's what Krishna is talking about over here. So ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodham parigraha. So we give up kama krodha, and then one comes to the spiritual platform. So Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. By tolerating material desires, one comes to the spiritual platform. Now, Krishna will talk about how after coming to the Brahman platform, then one attains bhakti. This is a very important verse. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma Na Shochati Na Kankshati Samah Sarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param. So Brahma Bhuta, Brahma Bhuyaya was talked about in the previous verse, so there's a continuation from there. Brahma Bhuta, one is on the Brahman platform, that is in the spiritual platform. Prasannatma, so now the Atma is Sachitananda. So when one comes to the Brahman platform, one experiences inner peacefulness. Na shochati na kankshati, one becomes free from hankering and lamentation. Samaha sarveshu bhuteshu, when one is situated equipoised in other things. Mad bhaktim labhate param. Mad bhaktim labhate, one attains my bhakti. This is for the impersonalists, this is a devastatingly irrefutable attack, this verse. For the Mayavadis especially, who have the idea that bhakti is a tool to mukti. So they have the idea that okay, you visualize some Brahman is formless, but you can visualize some form for the Brahman and worship that form, and by worshipping that form you will attain transcendence. That is their idea. And those who have this idea practice some level, some kind of bhakti. Some kind of bhakti means that they also may externally do the rituals of bhakti, but their goal is once we come to the Brahman platform, then there will no need for the forms. We'll go beyond the form to the formless. But what Krishna is telling over here is beyond the Brahman platform is the platform of bhakti. So again, we can visualize this as a zero, positive axis and negative axis. So Krishna is telling over here to come from to use the process of jnana to come from the negative axis to the 0 point. That means that's what Krishna has talked about in the previous verse. Brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So give up everything, all material attachments, and come to the 0 platform. But once one has come to the 0 platform, then Krishna is saying what happens? The 0 platform is the Brahman platform over here. After that, Krishna is saying Brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So Mad bhaktam labhate param. He says then one gets bhakti. So here, actually speaking, bhakti comes when one moves to the transcendental level, not when necessarily when one is not yet at the transcendental level. So bhakti is not just limited to the material platform. Bhakti is not just a tool for going from the material to the spiritual. Bhakti is characteristic of life at the spiritual level. So actually speaking, there is very little scope for misinterpreting this verse in any way. Krishna said Brahma Bhuta. That's very clear. What is the platform of the person? Brahma Bhuta. And Prasannatva. Naturally that person is relishing the joy of the Atma, because once one is free from material illusions, then the Satchitananda Anand nature of the Atma can be experienced to some extent. So Prasanna Atma. So one is joyful, and then na shochati na kankshati. There's no hankering, there's no lamentation, which is also indicative of a platform that is beyond a platform within the modes. Because even in goodness, there is some hankering and lamentation. There may be hankering for material things, but still there is hankering. And then samaha sarveshu bhuteshu. Samaha sarveshu bhuteshu. One sees all living beings equally. This is also a platform of a person who has gone beyond the influence of the modes. So clearly, this verse is talking about a person who has transcended the material reality, transcended the material level of consciousness, and still it is saying, after that one attains bhakti. What kind of bhakti? Param. Supreme bhakti, transcendental bhakti, pure bhakti. So mad bhaktim labhate param. So bhakti is not the bhakti is not preliminary to Gyan. Bhakti is the post-graduation after Gyan. Preliminary to Gyan means something which you do before the real thing. It's like there are preliminary exams. The real exam comes afterward. Before that, you have some preliminary exams. So bhakti is not preliminary to Gyan. That's what the Mayavadi idea is. But bhakti is the post-graduation after Gyan. After one cultivates Jnana, and the perfection is that one attains bhakti. So now we will see, does it mean that actually to practice bhakti, one has to first go through Jnana? That okay, bhakti will come, para bhakti will come after Jnana. Then does it mean that one has to, before that, practice bhakti? Before that, practice Jnana or some other process? No, we will see that actually Krishna will mention it in the just few verses later, 18, 56, 57. Sarva karmani pisada kurvana madhipashvaya. So he will mention about whatever level one at it is, one can take his shelter and move towards transcendence. So by this he will indicate that we can actually move from any level towards Krishna, and that will help us to make spiritual advancement. So na shochati na kankshati. So this is actually a characteristic of a person who is at the level of impersonal perfection, and such a person attains bhakti. But Prabhupada often uses this verse to describe the joy of the spiritual level. So this can also, because even a bhakta is at the Brahma Bhuta platform. Of course, the devotee's understanding of what is Brahma Bhuta is more developed, more mature than the understanding of a Jnani. A Jnani's idea is just to recognize that Aham Brahmasmi. That is Brahma Bhuta also. But deeper understanding is also that I am a servant of Krishna, Jivera Swarupa Krishna Nityadas. That is also Brahma Bhuta platform. So even devotees will have these characteristics. Devotee will also be Samaha Sarveshu Bhuteshu. Devotee will also be Na Shochati Na Kankshati. But overall, Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param. So that means this verse can be, in the flow of the Gita, this verse refers to the characteristics of a transcendentalist who has transcended the material level and then attains Parabhakti. But in a generic sense, this verse can be used to characterize any transcendentalist, any mature transcendentalist, and can use to characterize bhaktas also. And even bhaktas will also be free from hankering and lamentation. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, as there is no fear of a serpent with broken teeth, there is no fear from the senses when they are automatically controlled. So actually Srila Prabhupada is paraphrasing a verse by Prabhupada Saraswati over Durdantendriya Kala Sarpa Patali Protkhat Damishtrayate. That just as when the fangs of a snake are destroyed, then the snake doesn't cause any danger. So like that, when the enjoying mentality is removed from the senses, then the senses pose no danger for the transcendentalist. So that's at the Brahman level, when one is actually situated at the spiritual level, then one doesn't experience there's no enjoying mentality left, and therefore the senses are no longer a cause of trouble. Now Krishna will talk about what happens after one attains bhakti. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanyaschasmi tatvatah tato mam tatvato gyatva vishate tadanantaram. So here he's telling, by bhakti one can know me as I am, and when one knows me in that way, in truth, then one will attain the spiritual world. So let's look at this verse a little bit more deeply. Each of the component, bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanyaschasmi tatvatah. In truth, I can be known through bhakti. Bhaktya mam abhijanati. There is no way to know me in truth except through bhakti. And when somebody knows me in truth like this through bhakti, then that person attains the transcendental destination. So now Krishna has earlier talked about Tattvataha in another very important place, that is 4.9. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha. So Krishna has said that one who knows me tattvataha, one who knows my birth and activities, to be my appearance and activities, to be divya, to be transcendental, what happens to such a person? Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvatah tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti so Arjuna. So tyaktva deham, when they give up the body, punarjanma naiti, such a person will not take birth again, but in contrast will attain me. Mam eti so Arjuna, such a person will come back to me. And when the person comes back to me, then there is no further illusion, no further bondage, no further suffering. Mam eti so Arjuna. So there Krishna has not told about the process by which one can know him in truth. Although this next verse gives us a slight indication when he says, Vitaraga bhaya krodha manmana mamapashitaha bhavo gyantapasa puta mad bhavamagata. So there he says, many people have come back to me thus, have attained bhava for me, have attained love for me by manmaya mamapashita, by taking shelter of me, by fixing their mind on me. But here Krishna is elaborating that further. When can one fix the mind on him? When we can take shelter of him? When there is bhakti. So the way to know him tattvataha and the way to return back to him is bhaktya mam abhijanati. So abhijanati, to know him properly. And if that is not clear, yavan yaschasmi tattvataha, as I am actually. So what was mentioned, so the tattvataha understanding as its result is mentioned in 4.9. In 18.54, the means to the tattvataha understanding, the central heart of the process by which we can know him tattvataha, bhakti, that is emphasized. Now if we look at that further verse, what it says after that is that such a person will come to me. No, it doesn't say that person will go into some impersonal merging. He says, no, that person will come to me. Mameti so Arjuna. And what does Krishna say over here? He says that tato mam tattvato gyatva. So when one understands me in truth like that, vishate tadanantaram. So this might seem a bit impersonalistic to some people. Vishate generally means vishate means to enter into, and tadanantaram, thereafter. So after knowing me in truth, the person vishate, the person will enter. Now what does it refer to? Now most people may say, oh, that means that after knowing Krishna, one will enter into the Brahma Jyoti. So is that what Krishna is talking about over here? Vishate tadanantaram? Actually the word vishate doesn't necessarily have to have an impersonalistic meaning. The Vishyate can also have a personalistic meaning. The word Vishyate can very well refer to how a bird enters into a tree. A green bird, when it enters into a green tree, it seems to have become one. But although both are still there, they are different. Although they do not seem to be different to the naked eye. So Vishyate can also refer to a geographical territory into which one enters. One enters into a city. So when one enters into a city, it's not that one has become merged into the city. One has one's entity, but then one has entered into a city. A train enters into a city, a car enters into a city, a plane enters into a city's area, like that. So the point here Krishna is making is the soul enters into the spiritual world. And what is the specific destination? If we correlate this with verse 4.9, it's called Mameti. Person comes back to me. It's not just some impersonal merging. Actually, the impersonal level of realization has already come and gone in 18.54. That level of Brahma Bhuta and Prasanna Nashochitina Kankshati Samasarishibhuta, that's already mentioned. And actually beyond that is the perfection. It's the perfection of bhakti. And from bhakti, that parabhakti, one comes to know Bhagavan. When one comes to know Bhagavan, then one goes beyond. That means one attains the spiritual world. So tad anantaram. So Vishyate tad anantaram. This doesn't have to be necessarily taken impersonalistically. So Prabhupada emphasizes this point that one can know Krishna only through a proper knowledge. Surface acquaintance with the ocean is not sufficient. One must have complete knowledge of the aquatics living in the ocean's depths. So here Prabhupada is talking about the famous river-ocean metaphor. The Mayavadis use this metaphor to say that just as rivers enter into the ocean and become one with the ocean, like that, we enter into, the liberated soul enters into Brahman and becomes one with the Brahman. But Rupa Goswami talks about this analogy in different way, and he explains that actually some people, the river may merge into the ocean, but actually if in the river there are certain aquatics which are living. So if the river goes to the ocean, the aquatics may also go to the ocean. But that does not mean that the aquatics become one with the ocean. The aquatics still have their distinct identity, and they live with that distinct identity inside the ocean. So like that, the souls who are serving Krishna in this world, so here the river is like the river of love for Krishna. So the river of love for Krishna takes them towards Krishna, and then in the ocean of devotion to Krishna, the devotees which are like aquatics in the ocean, they delight eternally. So there doesn't have to be only one interpretation of this verse, that of this metaphor of river ocean, that it has to necessarily refer to merging. No, it can also be referring to meeting, to living in a different reality where others still have everyone has their individual identity. And now after this, Krishna will talk about how one can practice bhakti from whatever level one is at. So one doesn't have to practice bhakti from a materialistic level itself. One doesn't have to practice bhakti from the transcendental level alone. One can start from the material level and also can practice bhakti and rise to the transcendental level. So here let's look at Jnana Yoga. Let's look at what is happening in this chapter now. So till now, Karma Yoga offered to Krishna was 41 to 48. Then how Jnana Yoga leads to bhakti. Jnana Yoga leads to bhakti and leads to Krishna. That is talked just now in 49 to 55. Now from 56 onwards, Krishna will talk about an entirely different subject. He'll talk about Bhakti Yoga itself. So let's look at this verse. Now that means Krishna is talking about a different subject now. Not a continuation of the earlier subject, a different subject. Sarva karmanyapi sada kurvano madvyapashrayah matprasadadavapnoti shashvatam padam avyayam. So sarva karmanyapi sada. So while doing different kinds of karma, kurvano madvyapashrayah. Kurvano, while doing that, madvyapashrayah. When after taking shelter of me, kurvano madvyapashrayah mat prasadat avapnoti. By my mercy a person obtains What does such a person obtain? Shashvatam padam avyayam. One attains the eternal destination. Shashvatam padam. So, Krishna, the important point in this verse is that with respect to the understanding the flow of the Gita, the vital point is sarva karmanyapi sada. That whatever karma a person might be doing, that doesn't matter. Sarva karmani kurvano madhyapash. Sarva karmani means earlier Krishna has talked about how one has to practice, one has to act according to one's varnashram duties and then come to the transcendental platform and then one will attain bhakti. So bhakti is at once the summit of spirituality. It is the summit, but at the same time it is not only limited at the summit. And bhakti is a process to which one comes after going through different processes. After going karma, jnana, then one comes to bhakti. But in bhakti doesn't have to depend on karma and jnana. Bhakti can independently also extend downwards and elevate a person from a very low level. That's why sarva karmanyaphi sada. Whatever be the karma that one is practicing, still kurvano madhyapashrayah. If a person takes shelter of me, and then what happens when a person takes shelter of me? Mat prasadad avapnoti. By my prasad, by my mercy, such a person shashvatam padamavyayam. Such a person will attain the eternal destination. So we will see over here, Krishna has started introducing mat. If you see it before this in this chapter, before the 54th verse, Krishna has not talked about mat, mam and mat in this chapter, because he's focusing more on a summary of the Gita. He's talking about things from the perspective or from the level of the transcendentalist. Or the karma yogi doesn't know about Krishna. The jnana yogi doesn't know about Krishna. Who knows about Krishna? It is the bhakti yogi who knows about Krishna. So when Krishna is talking about bhakti yogi, then he talks about mam clearly. Yes, so Krishna is telling what such a person do? Kurvano madhyapashrayah. Person takes shelter of me, and by taking shelter of me, mat prasadat avapnoti. By my mercy, such a person will attain. So the word prasad is very important. Prasad can mean purity, prasad can mean mercy. Generally we use the word prasad to refer to what we take with the tongue. Yes, that is true, that is prasad. But actually prasad, the word prasad is not limited only to that. What it represents essentially is mercy. So if we get the mercy of Krishna, then by the mercy of Krishna we become elevated, we become purified, we become liberated. So here Krishna is talking about the potency of bhakti, which is actually involves the mercy potency of Krishna, by which one can get elevated from wherever one is. So from the lowest level one can rise up to the highest level. And shashvatam padam avyayam, the eternal destination one attains, and in this way one becomes purified and liberated. So now in the next verses Krishna will talk more about bhakti, and the focus will become on the glory of bhakti more and more steady. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, a very encouraging purport. In spite of all difficulties, he is eventually placed in the transcendental abode. So in spite of all difficulties will be there, but there is no limitation. Ultimately, devotee will transcend all difficulties and attain the spiritual level. Let's look at this further. Chetasa sarva karmani mai sanyasya matparaha buddhiyogam upashritya machitta satatam bhava. That chetasa sarva karmani, whatever karma man might be doing, if one does that karma properly, mai sanyasya matparaha, mai sanyasya. So if we sarva karmani, at the same point, whatever doing karma might be doing, but with our consciousness, we offer ourselves to Krishna. Mai sanyasya matpara, make him the supreme goal of life. Buddhi yoga mupashritya. Buddhi yoga. Krishna has used the word Buddhi yoga several times. We discussed this earlier also, that Krishna used the word Buddhi yoga in the 10th chapter. He has used earlier in 2.39 also, and now he's using it again. And each of these uses, there is a progressively deeper understanding of the word Buddhi yoga. In 2.39 he is talking about how use buddhi to do yoga. That means use buddhi, the understanding of the difference between matter and spirit, to do yoga, to become situated in the platform in a process that will connect one with transcendence. Asia, that was at 2.39. Then in 10.10, when Krishna talked about buddhi yoga, dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te, there it is more about the buddhi about how to do yoga that is given by Krishna. So the yoga that is given by Krishna is bhakti yoga. The buddhi that Krishna gives us is the intelligence to practice bhakti. And by both of these, one can move forward towards transcendence. So here Krishna makes it very clear on the context, buddhi yoga is actually bhakti yoga. So buddhi yoga is not a separate sadhana. It's not, the primary yogas are karma yoga, dhyan yoga, gyan yoga, ashtanga yoga. There are four, karma yoga, Gyan Yoga, Dhyan Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. So Dhyan and Ashtang Yoga are the same. And sometimes this is also referred to as Hatha Yoga. Generally Hatha Yoga refers to the first stages of the process of Ashtang Yoga. So Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, where the physical element is more emphasized, that is called as Hatha Yoga. So that is also called as Kundalini Yoga sometimes. So basically there are four main yogas. Karma, Jnana, Karma Yoga, Gyan Yoga, Dhyan Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. Buddhi yoga is not the fifth type of yoga. Buddhi yoga is simply referring to the yoga that involves the use of buddhi. And what that will refer to, we will have to look at the context to understand that. From this context, it's clear, Madhyapashrayaha, that Krishna is telling, actually, Mani Sannyasa Buddhi Yogam Upashritya, take shelter of me. So when we look at the context of taking shelter of Krishna, it's very clear that this is referring to bhakti. And in Machittaha, it's very common, Machitta. Satatam bhava, always be conscious of me in this way. So here Krishna is slowly but surely taking us towards Bhakti Yoga, and its focus on Bhakti Yoga will become even more clear in the future verses. So let us look at these verses in our next class. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.